All right, just some final thoughts on AJ's Kanye West moment, where he had this cringe-inducing meltdown in the ring following his second defeat to Alexander Usyk. Now, at the time when it happened, I was somewhat surprised. I was a little taken aback, but upon reflection, in hindsight, it was probably inevitable that something like this was going to happen eventually, because AJ bottles up his emotions. He contains them. The good thing about Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte and those guys is that they let off steam at regular intervals. They don't allow it to build up. AJ allows it to build up. So in the end, it got to him. It had to get to him eventually. And he snapped. All those years of people calling him Frank Bruno 2.0, Fake J, a stiff bodybuilder, saying that he's got no heart, no chin, that he was gifted a title that was stolen from Fury, that he was a manufactured champion, that he was scared of Wilder, scared of Fury, when he was getting trolled by Fury for about 3 years straight on Twitter, and all of Fury's fans, of course, and all Wilder's fans, all the belts AJ had, all the title defenses he had against Parker and Povetkin and Klitschko and all these guys, and people still say that he's fake. Meanwhile, Deontay Wilder's best win is Berman Stavern or Luis Ortiz. Those are his best wins, and he gets more credit than AJ. And so AJ's frustrated by this, thinking, hang on, I've got all these belts, and I've beaten Povetkin and Olympic champion and unifications, and Wilder's getting more credit than me. And of course, Fury's playing into all that and saying Wilder's the most dangerous and AJ's just some fake bum. Fury also, by the time he comes back, has only had one world title fight against Klitschko, and he's getting more credit than AJ. That he goes and fights Wilder, then has a couple fights against Tom Schwartz and Otto Wallen, and he's still getting more credit than AJ after AJ's put in all this work. So AJ at this point, his head must be spinning, thinking, what have I got to do to actually get the respect that these guys are getting? He tried to make the fight with Wilder several times, offered him, 12 million, 15 million, and then eventually 100 million with that DAZN deal, which Wilder turned down. And rather than the public get on AJ's side saying, you tried to make the fight, but the other party weren't willing, no, for some bizarre reason, everybody jumps on AJ and says, you ducked the fight. I mean, the same thing last year when AJ was trying to make the Fury fight. It didn't happen because of the arbitration that Fury had with Wilder. And somehow people say that AJ didn't want the Fury fight. Fury was gaslighting the public, saying, oh, I tried to make it 1,000,000 times with AJ, but he didn't want it. Again, AJ doesn't reply. He doesn't respond. He just bottles it all up, holds it in, losing to Andy Ruiz in New York, which was tremendously humiliating. Fury coming straight out and kicking AJ while he's down, saying, I don't see what all the fuss was about. He's just a stiff bodybuilder. I told you guys all along. Getting disrespected to his face when he's in New York City by the media, by people on the street, and AJ's holding it all in. He's just smiling and not retaliating. And it gets to the point where he's even getting heckled in real life by pencil neck students when he's walking down the street minding his own business. I mean, you know you've hit rock bottom when you're a 6'6" professional boxer, but even pencil neck students are heckling you. Dear, oh dear. He must be thinking, what have I got to do to get some respect round here? And he nearly snapped then, of course, when he went up to the students' room and had a stern word with them. But of course, everybody then jumps on AJ and says, see, I told you he was a bully all along. This is the real AJ. What a scumbag. You'd think that AJ was the one who started it. Bro, if someone said something like that to me, for no reason, when I'm walking down the street minding my own business, what I would have said in retaliation to those students would have been far worse than what AJ said. And obviously, I'm not world heavyweight championship material, but I'm a man with pride, and I don't take nonsense like that from random idiots on the street. Or you think because you're some little pencil neck that you should be allowed to say whatever you want to anyone without consequence. Is that what it is? Nah, bro, it's not going to run like that. I thought AJ was very restrained, actually. He continued to contain his emotions, to bottle them up, following his first defeat to Usyk. And of course, people criticized him for it. Teddy Atlas isn't the only person who said that AJ accepts defeat too easily. Now, I guess the idea that AJ was going with is that he wants to appear to be this great sportsman who's magnanimous in defeat and this role model who always respects his opponents and all this kind of thing. So I get it, but people were critical of him for it. But when he did the opposite after the Usyk rematch, people still criticize him. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You contain the emotion and they say that you don't care enough about losing. You let the emotions out, they call you a diva, a crybaby, and whatever else. Now, obviously, what he did was disrespectful towards Usyk. He's since put out an apologetic statement on his Instagram page and what have you, and Usyk is already over it as well. Usyk said that he understands these are common emotions, and I guess he gets all the pressure that AJ's been under and all the criticism that he's had. And of course, AJ wants to win, so he understands the agony that he's going through in terms of defeat. So Usyk's over it, but you got some people out there who are going overboard in terms of what AJ did. What did he say that was actually that bad? He didn't say anything that bad. He spoke about the fact that he's too big to be able to throw as many punches as Rocky Marciano and all these other heavyweights. I saw some people say that that was disrespectful. How's that disrespectful? It's true. Where's the disrespect come in? The most disrespectful thing that he did was throwing the belts out of the ring. And I guess he got into little arguments with some of Usyk's team and whatever. It's all handbags, really. It wasn't that deep. I saw some guy on Outmatch Boxing's video about the AJ situation who said that I've been watching boxing for 38 years and this is absolutely disgraceful. It's the worst thing I've never seen anything like it. I was like, are you having a laugh? You haven't seen a worse meltdown in the ring after watching boxing for 38 years? Give it a rest, you old tart. What are you talking about? So what, you never saw Zab Judah when he attacked referee Jay Nady after he got knocked out by Costa Zoo? You never saw that, no? Zab Judah literally attacked the referee for rightfully stopping the fight because Judah was gone. And he continued on this crazy tantrum for like several minutes after the fight trying to attack the ref. You never saw that, huh? You're saying that AJ's meltdown supersedes that? Or how about when James Butler broke his opponent's jaw with a bare knuckle sucker punch after the fight in the ring? James Butler went on to murder Max Kellerman's brother, incidentally. You're saying that AJ's behavior eclipsed what James Butler did? And what about the granddaddy of all in-the-ring meltdowns, Mike Tyson in the Holyfield rematch, where he not only bit a chunk out of Holyfield's ear, but when Holyfield was jumping up and down in agony, Tyson then flew at him and shoved him into the ropes. And then when the action resumed, Tyson tried to bite his other ear several times, at which point Mills Lane disqualified him, and Tyson threw a massive tantrum where he was actually swinging punches at police and security in the ring. And you're saying that AJ's little Kanye West moment was more outrageous than that? Again, do me a favor. Talk about AJ being a drama queen. Some of the people reacting to it are bigger drama queens. Oh my God, it's so outrageous. You know, these grown men who act like Greta Thunberg. How dare you? You need to go take up needlepoint or something. I don't think boxing's for you if you think this is just too much for you to handle. Usyk's over it. You should be over it by now. It's not that deep. Yeah, it was disrespectful and it was whatever. But as I said, AJ has been containing his emotions for so long, trying to maintain his respectful corporate image. He hasn't been letting off steam, and he's been under tremendous criticism all his career, trolling from Fury, trolling from Fury's fans, trolling from Wilder and Wilder's fans. He gets knocked out by Andy Ruiz and people are laughing and saying you're a Frank Bruno hype job, you're stiff, you got knocked out by a fat guy. You know, Fury's piling, everyone's piling on when he's down, kicking him when he's down. And then he loses to Usyk and Fury's like, oh, he's lost to a middleweight and he's no good. And I don't know what all the hype was about, just a bodybuilder and all this kind of thing. And AJ just stays silent and he barely ever retaliates. It's inevitable that at some stage, again, looking back in hindsight, he was going to have to explode. He was going to have to. It's too much, bruv. It's too much. He was going to have to explode at some point because with the Andy Ruiz rematch, he had the opportunity to silence the critics and silence the doubters. But after losing to Usyk for a second time, that opportunity to silence the doubters is gone. So now he knows the critics are going to pile on. The naysayers, the haters, and everybody's going to troll him even more than ever. And this time, there is no quick fix for all the criticism and hate and trolling he's going to get. He knows it's going to be a very, very long road back. Also, AJ was criticized in the first Usyk fight by me and many other people for not showing enough meanness, for not showing enough tenacity. So in the second fight, AJ alluded to this in his Instagram post, or was it in the post-fight press conference? I forget now. But he alluded to the fact that he had to go to a dark place mentally in order to prepare himself for the Usyk rematch. Because again, in that first Usyk fight, he had the mentality of a victim. He looked sorry for himself in there. In this fight, he put himself in a different mindset. Eye of the tiger, the old quote-unquote roadman Joshua. That's the mindset he had to put himself in to try and win. And with that mindset comes some baggage. With that mindset comes a certain attitude. Now, you can say that that's the real AJ exposed, but we all have different aspects to our personality. I consider myself to be a good guy. I'm not necessarily a nice guy, because a nice guy is someone who's friendly and nice to everybody. I'm not really like that, but I would say I'm a good guy. My heart is in the right place, but I'm a little spiky. I've had lots of altercations in my life. I've switched on lots of people. I've had fights in the street, in the ring, in the nightclubs when I was a bouncer. I've had road rage where someone has cut me up or someone has been disrespectful for no reason over a parking spot or something like that. And we get into it and I'm effing and blinded and this, that, and the other. I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences when people push your buttons and you start switching and getting angry. And that is without all the trolling from millions of people that AJ gets, where people are gleefully mocking your downfall when you get beaten by some fat Mexican guy. So without all the pressure and without millions of people trolling me, I have moments where I switch on people and do things that I might later regret. And I'm sure many of you have the same experiences. We can't even fathom the type of pressure that these boxers are under. So again, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's the worst thing ever for AJ to do what he did. I get it. He's an alpha male. He wanted to win. The trolls have been getting to him. The pressure's been getting to him. He didn't want to fail. He desperately wanted to win. And he exploded after the fight, threw the belts out of the ring, which was disrespectful. But, you know, it's water under the bridge. It's done. It's over. Now he moves on. Hopefully the little melodramatic tarts who are making out as though AJ's Satan himself because of that outburst, hopefully they'll move on as well, because it's not that deep, people. This is boxing. It's not tennis. It is a sport full of people who are trying to beat their opponents half to death. That's what it is. In such a sport, you're going to get people that have mean streaks. Isn't that obvious? You see, this is why I never got offended when Deontay Wilder was talking about catching bodies. Do I want to see bodies being caught in the ring? People losing their lives? Of course I don't want to see that. But I understand that in a sport as brutal as this, you're going to get people with those kind of brutal mentalities. It comes with the territory. Mike Tyson was like that. He was trying to catch bodies. He said so. George Foreman was the same. And Deontay Wilder, who is this era's biggest puncher by the view of most people, same again. A completely brutal mentality when he steps in the ring. Thankfully, we've got doctors and cornermen and referees to make sure that fatalities are kept to an absolute minimum. But I'm realistic about what boxing is and what this type of sport comes with. Yeah, there's going to be lots of narcissists in boxing. There has to be. You have to have a certain degree of narcissism about you to succeed at the highest level in most things, but particularly in boxing. And your ego needs to be colossal with regards to your fighting prowess. Your competitive spirit needs to be intense. And with that comes behavior, which is not like what you would expect from the average Joe. And like I say, if you don't understand why AJ snapped and you think it's just him being a diva, then you must have dangerously low testosterone. This is not about caping for AJ or defending him as a person. I don't know AJ as a person, don't want to know him. All I know is that he's an entertaining boxer. That's all I care about. I want to be entertained, whether it's by Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury or Usyk or AJ. Entertain me. That's what I'm paying my money for. And I give credit where credit's due. No fighter is below praise and no fighter is above criticism. That's always been my motto. But again, I'm realistic. These are not normal people. So don't expect normal behavior all the time. And when I have my moments where I'm switching on people for being disrespectful towards me, how can I then look at AJ, who gets way more criticism in real life, not just on the internet, who gets way more criticism and trolling than I do, 1,000,000 times more? How can I look at him when he's going up and having a stern word with those students and be critical about him for what he did. Bro, if somebody was heckling me like that for no reason, I'm minding my own business and somebody's screaming abuse, you think I'm going to go up there and be diplomatic? I don't care if they're pencil neck students. What the hell gives you the right to start heckling me for no reason when I'm walking down the street minding my own business? You have to learn how to conduct yourself and behave properly. And if you don't want no drama with nobody, then don't heckle them. Simple as that. So yeah, that's my take on it. AJ had his meltdown. It was really just handbags. Usyk's over it. It was embarrassing. It was cringe, but it's done. Usyk moves on to bigger and better things. AJ has to rebuild. Does he continue boxing? Does he retire? I don't see why he should retire. As I said in the previous video, the golden eras in heavyweight boxing are not just made by one man. There is a cast of characters that all contribute to it being a golden era. And not all of those characters are going to be the number one. Somebody has to play second, third, and fourth fiddle. Somebody has to be the nearly man. But we appreciate them all, don't we? Joe Frazier wasn't the number one during his era. George Foreman came and smashed him to pieces in 2 rounds. Ali beat him 2 times out of 3. Ken Norton wasn't the number one. He got smashed to bits by George Foreman. He got stopped by Ernie Shavers. Got smashed to bits a few times. Ernie Shavers himself got smashed to bits by Jerry Quarry. We don't look back and say, oh, these guys were garbage and they were no good and this, that, and the other. They should have retired years ago. No, we appreciate the role they played in that golden era where Ali stood head and shoulders eventually above everybody. But everyone played their part to make it such a compelling movie. The same thing in the 90s. It wasn't just all about Lennox Lewis. No, there was Tyson. Obviously, his prime was in the 80s, but he played a big part in the 90s too. There was Tyson, there was Holyfield, there was Riddick Bowe, there was Andrew Gallotta, there was later on David Tura and various other people, Ike Beabucci, Michael Mora, Ray Mercer, Tommy Morrison, on and on it goes. Everybody played their part in order to make it a compelling movie. Same situation in this era. So all the people saying, oh, get rid of AJ is a hype job bum, Frank Bruno 2.0 and all this kind of stuff. It's like, are you a boxing fan? Or are you some kind of fanboy with an agenda? Or someone whose girlfriend likes AJ, so now you hate him based on that? Again, I don't particularly care for the guy on a personal level, but in the ring, hasn't he provided loads of entertainment? Did you not find the Dylan White fight entertaining? You didn't find the Klitschko fight entertaining? You didn't find the first Andy Ruiz fight entertaining? You didn't like the Kubrat Pulev fight or even the second Usyk fight? AJ's provided loads of entertainment. So isn't that a worthwhile contribution that he's brought to this heavyweight era? If Tyson Fury was the only talent and everybody else was absolute, not only garbage, but were not entertaining, then nobody would even be watching heavyweight boxing. It takes more than that. People remember Ali's reign in the 70s more than his reign in the 60s, because in the 60s, there wasn't such a compelling cast of characters for Ali to bounce off of. In the 70s, there was loads of them. And so the eras which tend to turn the public off, like the Klitschko era, for example, it's when you don't have this wide variety of characters. So be thankful that there's the AJs. Be thankful that there's the Deontay Wilders. Be thankful that there's the Usyks and the Dylan Whites and all these other people, because it's all part of the melting pot, all part of the cast of characters that make this movie so enjoyable to watch. That's how I feel about it. So no, AJ, as far as I'm concerned, has got more to give. It's not like he got stopped twice in a row. He lost on points to one of the greatest fighters in history. Let's be clear about what Usyk is. He is one of the greatest fighters in history. Now, at cruiserweight, he currently has a higher status, for my money, than he does at heavyweight, because he achieved more at cruiserweight than he's achieved at heavyweight so far. But nonetheless, he's still a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he might go on to become a Hall of Fame heavyweight. We'll have to see how it plays out. So this is not some average Joe that AJ's ended up losing to 2 fights in a row. This is a very, very special talent, and there's no disgrace in losing to somebody who's that good. So, you know, all the people who want to say that he's Bruno 2.0 and all, look, Frank Bruno, a very likable character and funny and all that, and he was a trier, but he never achieved even a fraction of the things that AJ achieved in the amateurs, never mind his professional career. And when I say amateurs, I'm not even talking about the Olympics. AJ was in the World Championships in Azerbaijan, where he beat Camarel legitimately. That's on YouTube. He beat Camarel legitimately in Azerbaijan, and he made it all the way to the final where he lost only by 1 point against an Azerbaijani boxer in Azerbaijan in front of the Azerbaijani president. And that's when AJ had very little experience compared to the guys he was competing against, like Camarel and the guy he faced in the final and so on. So Bruno never even achieved that much in the amateurs, never mind then going to the Olympics. And yes, AJ got a gift against Erislandy Savon in the Olympics, no doubt. But lots of fighters get gift decisions at some point in their career. It doesn't invalidate all the legitimate wins that they'd previously had or that they subsequently have. So Manny Pacquiao had at least one gift decision over Marquez in the eyes of many people. That doesn't invalidate all the legitimate wins that Pacquiao had. When you look at Josh Taylor recently, most people believe he had a gift decision over Jack Catterall. That doesn't invalidate the legitimate wins that he'd previously had. Boxing fans tend to have these very short memories. You got to take somebody's career in its totality. So AJ did much better than Frank Bruno in the amateurs and even in the Olympics. Let's say, for argument's sake, he lost the Savon fight, which I think he did. The Camarel fight, which was actually a rematch, I think that was touch and go. That could have gone either way. But in between that, he actually beat, legitimately, Zheli Zhang, the Big Bang, and Ivan Ditchko. But his critics never give him credit for those wins. They never give him credit for what he did in the World Championships when he was so inexperienced going in against guys who had had hundreds of fights. And then they say he's just like Bruno. He's nothing like Bruno. He's a little stiff and muscular, and he's black, of course. That's about as far as the similarities go. Stylistically, he's nothing like him. He's more talented. He's done more as a pro. What was Bruno's best win? Oliver McCall? He got knocked out by Bone Crusher Smith, knocked out by Tim Witherspoon. Neither one of those guys is as good as Klitschko. Yeah, he lost to two Hall of Famers in Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson, but he eventually wins the world title against McCall. And again, McCall's nowhere near as good as Klitschko. Yes, I'm talking about the version of Klitschko that AJ fought. McCall's not as good as that. Or certainly Povetkin. Povetkin's better than Oliver McCall. McCall was a borderline journeyman when he faced Lennox Lewis. So anyway, long story short, yeah, AJ's got plenty of flaws. And at this stage, you'd find very few people who would bet on him proving himself to be the best of this era. But that doesn't mean he's rubbish. That doesn't mean that he's no better than Frank Bruno. In fact, I saw an interview with, I think it was Hasim Ratman. Was he with Tim Witherspoon in the interview? I forget now. But he was asked by the interviewer whether AJ was the new Frank Bruno. And Hasim Ratman said that's an insult to AJ. He's way better than Frank Bruno. It was either Hasim Ratman or Tim Witherspoon who actually said that. And I suppose they don't know what they're talking about, right? So, whatever, man. It's like people go overboard. Tyson Fury at this stage is right up there with Alexander Usyk. Those two are reigning over the heavyweight division right now. We need to get an undisputed fight to see who's the best out of those two. But AJ's played his part. He's done very well for boxing. He's brought a lot of eyes back to the heavyweight division. Deontay Wilder's played his part. Dylan White has played his part. Andy Ruiz giving us that incredible upset in New York. He played his part. So everyone's doing their thing. Isn't it wonderful? Do we have to have a situation where we want certain fighters out of the division or we want certain fighters forgotten about? Nah. You're not a boxing fan if that's what you want. You want fighters out of boxing who have brought tremendous entertainment to the sport. Deontay Wilder, as much of an idiot as he is, I've never once said that I want this guy out of boxing. When he lost to Tyson Fury the third time, lots of other people were saying that. I weren't one of them. I was saying, nah, yes, Wilder's an idiot, but he's entertaining in the ring. And so let's see what he has when he comes back. If he isn't too damaged from the knockout defeats, and he didn't get knocked out with one punch like Dylan White, so his punch resistance might not be shot yet. So let's see him in a comeback fight. And if he's still got something, put him in there against Andy Ruiz. Put him in there against Daniel Dubois, Filip Hrgovic, Joe Joyce, Anthony Joshua, who's now just another contender. Put him in there against these guys. Loads of interesting fights to be made. It's a wonderful thing. Appreciate the division as it is. Appreciate the depth, the variety of talent we have while it's here, because it won't be here forever. Before long, we're going to go back to another dark age of heavyweight boxing where there'll be some boring champion and contenders that are totally uninspired and have no desire to actually win, which is what the majority of the Klitschko era was. Calvin Brock, who worked in a bank for his day job. You know, all these guys like Ray Austin and, oh God, the Klitschko era was so depressing. It was so boring. That's why when David Haye came along, he caused some excitement because there was no characters in the division. All the fighters were either fat cruiserweights or they were big lumps that had very little talent like Mariusz Wach or Nikolai Valuev. There was very few big talented fighters and very few athletic fighters at all. That's why so many people were pinning their hopes on David Haye, because they thought, wow, at least he's in shape. Appreciate the heavyweight division for what it is right now. There's always naysayers. There's always people going to say, oh, the division's rubbish and Fury's the only talent. That's what they were saying in the 90s. They were saying that the division's rubbish, Mike Tyson's the only talent, and he needs to come out of jail to sort this mess out because all these guys are just pretenders. That's what they were saying in the 90s. I was there. But now people look back and think, oh, wow, the 90s was great. Yeah, they weren't saying that at the time. And years from now, some of you miserable sods are going to look back on this era and you're going to say, oh, the Tyson Fury, AJ, Usyk era was great. Yeah, you'll be saying that in 10, 20 years' time. But right now you're saying it's terrible. You know, that's how some people are. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Just some final thoughts on that whole AJ Meltdown situation. He snapped. I guess it was inevitable in retrospect. In retrospect, he couldn't take all the trolling and the trolling that's going to come. And that's why I said they needed to take the microphone off him. Not just because what he was saying, the rambling, and it was a bad look and it was disrespectful to Usyk, but also because he was digging himself a hole. He was upset about all the trolls. That's why he was talking about all the criticism. But he's giving them more fuel by going on that weird rant. So his team let him down by not getting that mic off him. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Catch you guys on the next one. I'm out. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly. It's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and it's 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.